way of doing that, or you're just taking that power and utilizing it for the needs, like building AI data centers in space?
I think the case, it's a no-brainer for building solar-powered AI data centers in space, because as you mentioned, it's also very cold in space. If you're in the shadow, then it's very cold in space, just 3 degrees Kelvin. So you have solar panels facing the sun, and then a radiator that's pointed away from the sun, so it has no sun incidence, and then it's just cooling. It's a very efficient cooling system. So net effect is that the lowest cost place to put AI will be space, and that'll be true within 2 years, maybe three at the latest.
Wow. So looking 10 or 20 years out, how would you describe success with AI or space technology, and where do you see it? Are you more certain what's going to happen in the next 3 years, or 5 or 10?
I don't know what's going to happen in 10 years, but the rate at which AI is progressing, I think we might have AI that is smarter than any human by the end of this year, and I would say no later than next year.
Wow.
And then probably by 2030 or 2031, call it 5 years from now, AI will be smarter than all of humanity collectively.
We only have a number of minutes left, but I want to humanize you for a second. So there's no speculation that you're
a joke about peace.
Right. I want to. I would frame this question by: you are the most successful entrepreneur, industrialist in the 21st century, maybe beyond. I want to really get this. What inspired you? Who inspired you? What was the foundation of your curiosity? And importantly, was there an aha moment, an epiphany at any time in your life and career?
Well, as a kid, I read a lot of science fiction, sci-fi, fantasy books.
Yeah, we talked about that.
And comic books, and I always liked technology. I didn't expect to be where I am today. That seems incredibly implausible. But I was inspired by reading about books about the future, about science fiction, and I guess I want to make science fiction not fiction forever. At some point, turn science fiction to science fact. We want to have like Starfleet and Star Trek, really, for real, like where we actually have giant spaceships traveling through space, going to other planets, traveling to other star systems.
I'm just interested if I could be beamed up to go back to New York. I'd like to just be beamed back to New York instead of flying.
Yeah.
Talking about Star Trek.
No, I guess my essential, what I would call the philosophy of curiosity. I'd like to understand the meaning of life. Is the standard model of physics correct regarding the beginning of life, beginning of existence, and the end of the universe? What questions do we not know to ask that we should ask? And AI will help us with these things. So I'm just trying to understand, how do we get here? What's going on? What's real? Are there aliens? Maybe there are. And if we've got spaceships that are traveling to other star systems, we may encounter aliens, or we may find many long dead alien civilizations. But I just want to know what's going on. I'm curious about the universe, and that's my philosophy.
Do you see yourself ever going to Mars in your lifetime?
Yeah, I would say like
That's a long commitment.
I've been asked.
Isn't that 3 years each way?
It's 6 months.
6 months, that's all it is?
Yeah, 6 months, but the planets only align every 2 years.
Okay.
So, I've been asked a few times, like, do I want to, die on Mars? And I'm like, yes, but just not on impact.
That's a good answer. Anyway, we're out of time. hopefully everybody enjoyed this. I mean, there's so many myths around Elon Musk. I could tell you he's a great friend, and I constantly learn so much from him. And I'm totally inspired by what he has done. I've been inspired who he is, and I'm totally inspired by his vision of the future. And I don't think it's such a bad future, and I agree with his optimism. So, Elon, thank you. Any last words?
Well, I think my last words would be, I would encourage everyone to be optimistic and excited about the future.
Good.
And generally, I think for quality of life, it is actually better to err on the side of being an optimist and wrong rather than a pessimist and right.
On that note.
Committee will come to order. Gentleman from ranking members recognized for unanimous consent request.
Thank you very kindly, Mr. Chairman, and this just goes to the question of the hypothetical witness at the trial that didn't happen. New York Times, May 1, 2024, Trump acknowledges he wanted to go to the Capitol on January 6th.
Without objection.
Carol Leonnig, who you quoted, Carol Leonnig outlines Tony Ornato's history of lies. That's June 30, 2022.
Without objection.
In July 1, 2022, the men disputing Hutchinson's testimony are two of Trump's biggest acolytes. And finally, June 29, 2022, CNN, Cassidy Hutchinson stands by her testimony amid pushback. Thank you very much.
Gentleman from New York is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Smith, over the past few years, Republicans have waged constant attacks on you. Donald Trump has said you are totally compromised, a political hitman, a left-wing radical, a criminal, a fully weaponized monster, and that you should be considered mentally deranged and thrown out of the country. Just this week, he called you a sick bastard. Unfortunately, the rules of decorum prevent me from saying what I think of Donald Trump. But he is not the only one to launch attacks against you. Chairman Jordan has accused you of abusive surveillance and accused you and your team of partisan and politically motivated prosecutions. Despite the mountain of evidence that you laid out in the special counsel's report and in your court filings, President Trump's supporters are convinced that the only reason your team tried to hold him accountable is because you have a vendetta against him. I want to address these allegations today. You have had a long and distinguished career with the Justice Department, including serving as the chief of DOJ's Public Integrity Section for 5 years. While leading the Public Integrity Section, you led investigations and prosecution of public figures and political leaders from both parties, Republicans and Democrats. Can you give us a couple of examples?
Sorry about that. During my time as the Chief of Public Integrity, I investigated cases involving both Republicans and Democrats. The standard in all of those cases was the same: follow the facts and the law. Didn't matter what party you were in, it mattered the facts of the case. In doing that, there were cases I brought against Democrats and cases I brought against Republicans. There were also cases that I investigated and did not bring against Democrats and Republicans. Party affiliation played no role in my investigations. I can think of multiple cases of prominent members of Congress that we investigated who were Republicans, who, upon reviewing the law and the facts, I decided not to go forward in those cases. And the same could be said with people on the Democratic side. I've always tried to follow the facts and the law in my career.
When it comes to deciding whether to pursue a criminal prosecution of an individual, what factors do you consider?
The primary factors are the facts and the law. As a federal prosecutor, in making a prosecutorial decision, you're guided by the federal principles of prosecution, which guide one not only to look at the facts and the law, but the federal interests. And that is exactly what we did in this case, as set forth in my final report.
Does partisan politics play a role in your decision whether or not to prosecute someone?
None.
To be clear, did partisan politics play a role in your decision to charge Donald Trump?
It did not.
What does it do to the justice system if political leaders place pressure on prosecutors to file charges against their political enemies? What are the implications if prosecution decisions are based on politics, not the law?
I think it weakens the rule of law in our country because it weakens the mechanism for us to prosecute, among other things, corruption. When there is political prosecutions targeting people because they're enemies of the president, the department loses credibility and it can't do its job in all sorts of cases.
Mr. Smith, for your decades-long public service and for working tirelessly to uphold the rule of law, those who attack and smear you and your team in order to protect Donald Trump should be ashamed of themselves. I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Gentleman from California is recognized.
Mr. Smith, do you see criminals to my left? You don't see any. Do you see people who are committing crimes because they continue to believe things that just aren't true? That's paraphrasing Ronald Reagan, that liberals aren't stupid, they just know things that don't happen to be true. If the president believed that he was cheated in an election, that there was fraud, or in some other way a number of items led to his defeat, when in fact he should have won according to the Constitution, does that make him a criminal?
Sir,
No, that's a yes or no, please, Mr. Smith. These people here are continuing to grapple constantly with things that aren't true, like socialism works, or that somehow everything the Republicans do is evil and everything they do is right. They've never reached a conclusion in a typical partisan case in which we're not evil because we think something different and we're not wrong. You understand the Constitution. Do you understand the Bill of Rights, that someone has the absolute right to believe something, whether it's true or not, and to advocate for something, whether it's true or not? Do you understand that in addition to your oath to the Constitution, that that's one of the things the First Amendment allows for, isn't it?
yes, sir.
Okay, so if you know that people have a right to opine, lobby for, assert, do everything they can legally to ask for people to make different decisions, then why is it you saw criminal conduct on behalf of a president who believed he didn't win? Chairman Jordan and myself have something in common along with a number of others here. We saw wrongdoing, and on January 6th, we voted not to confirm 2 states because they had violated the U.S. Constitution in how they selected who got ballots. And yet, you're going to come here and say, oh, I just followed the law. When you went after these people and you said, well, technically I can do that, you didn't see any selective nature or any separation of powers under the Constitution to spying on the activities and the conversations of the Speaker of the House? To what end would conversations between the Speaker of the U.S. House, third or second in line to be the president, and the president, in what basis would it be any of your business other than you believe that there was a conspiracy without conspiracy as a basic premise? You, like the president's men for Richard Nixon, went after your political enemies. Maybe they're not your political enemies, but they sure as hell were Joe Biden's political enemies, weren't they? They were Harris's political enemies. They were the enemies of the president, and you were their arm, weren't you?
No.
No. Oh, great. So you spied on the Speaker of the House and these other senators and so on, and informed no one, and in fact put in a gag order so they couldn't discover it. If they were not subjects of a conspiracy investigation, why did Congress, a separate branch that you, under the Constitution, have to respect, why is it that no one should be informed, including the judges? As you went in to spy on these people, did you mention that you were spying on seeking records so you could find out about when conversations occurred between the U.S. Speaker of the House and the president? Did you inform the judge, or did you hold that back?
My office didn't spy on anyone.
Wait a second. The question I asked you, Mr. Smith, was pretty straightforward. Did you withhold that information from an Article III judge in the process of taking the records of the Speaker of the House?
We complied with Department.
Did you hold back
Mr.
that
Chairman, would you
information?
please instruct the gentleman to allow the witness to answer the questions?
It's not your time. I'd like my time back.
Mr. Chairman,
again,
you have
please.
repeatedly done that in the past. The witness has the right to answer the question.
And there'll be due time to answer the question. Would you please put my time back and let me finish this? Mr. Smith, I asked you a question and you were not responsive to it, and I want you to be responsive to it. Did you, whether you think it was legal or not, whether you think it was right or not, did you withhold the name of Kevin McCarthy, Speaker of the House, when you were seeking records on Kevin McCarthy, the Speaker of the House, or Jim Jordan, the chairman of this committee?
At the time the gentleman is.
No,
is- you
please
got
give
a
me
few more
back the
seconds.
time that was
No,
taken away.
Time has expired, but we're going to let the witness answer your question because it's an important question. The witness can respond.
We did not provide that information to the judge when we requested a non-disclosure order, consistent with the law and consistent with Department
Mr.
policy.
Chairman, the amazing thing here today is that we have an admission that an Article
Mr. Chairman,
1...
the gentleman's time has
Come on.
expired by now 34 seconds.
It gets more than 5 minutes?
How many
'cause it's a
times you
good
can interrupt
question?
me?
The time belongs to the gentleman from California, but it has expired.
I will be brief in my address to the chairman. We have the evidence that an Article 1 representative on behalf of the president withheld
Order,
from
Mr.
Article
Chairman.
3.
Mr. Chairman, are we
that
to be granted the
information.
same leniency
And
at
with
this
that,
point?
I yield back in
yield
disgust of this witness.
Sticking with California, the gentlelady from California is now recognized.
Mr. Smith, thank you for being here today. Earlier, the chairman spent a lot of time talking about Cassidy Hutchinson, who we know is just one of many witnesses. It's important to note that there was testimony that she was told something by Mr. Ornato, not that she had personal knowledge. And of course, Mr. Ornato was of very questionable veracity. We had a testimony from a Metropolitan Police Department official about an argument, a big argument that the president was having about going to the Capitol. And in fact, the vehicle was delayed going back to the Capitol while that argument occurred. But having said that, I want to focus on something my colleagues across the aisle seem to want to ignore. The fact that your investigation into President Trump's attempt to overturn the 2020 election was built on testimony from members of the Republican Party. In fact, last week, the New York Times published grand jury transcripts from Georgia that show the same pattern in Trump's Georgia criminal case. Georgia's Republican Attorney General Chris Carr testified that he told, quote, and this is a quote, "We're just not seeing the things that you are seeing." And the late Georgia House Speaker David Ralston, also a Republican, testified that Trump's fake elector scheme was, quote, "the craziest thing I've heard." And then there's Senator Lindsey Graham, one of the president's closest allies. In his secret grand jury testimony, Senator Graham told the jurors, quote, "I have told him more times than we can count that he fell short," unquote. And then he said this, quote, "If you told him Martians came and stole votes, he'd be inclined to believe it." Martians, that's from Senator Graham speaking under oath. So here's my question. Mr. Smith, in your deposition with this committee, you testified, and here's a quote, "Our case was built on, frankly, Republicans who put their allegiance to the country before the party." That the president's closest allies are telling him that his claims of election fraud are wrong. And so I'm just wondering, can you explain what you meant in your deposition, that it was Republicans who were putting their allegiance to their country ahead of their party?
Yes. There were witnesses who I felt would be very strong witnesses, including, for example, the Secretary of State in Georgia, who told Donald Trump the truth, told him things that he did not want to hear, and put him on notice that what he was saying was false. These were people who knew how the elections were conducted in these states, and I believe that witnesses of that nature, witnesses who are willing to tell the truth, even if it's going to impose a cost on them in their lives, my experience as a prosecutor over 30 years is that witnesses like that are very credible, and that jurors tend to believe witnesses like that because they pay a cost for telling the truth.
You know, who were some of the Republican witnesses who told you that who told President Trump that his claims of election fraud were false? Can you share that with us?
There were a range of witnesses. They ranged from people on his campaign team who had wanted him to win, were employed to help him win the election. They included state officials, state Republican officials who wanted him to win, voted for him, campaigned for him, asked him and his co-conspirators to provide evidence to support their claims, and invariably they never did. It included officials, advisors, people he worked with in the White House who he relied upon for important decisions and who he trusted in other contexts. We felt we had strong evidence from a variety of sources.
Time of the gentlelady has expired.
Mr. Chairman, my fellow Californian, you were allowing the witness
Yeah, it's a
to
good
answer.
question. Isn't that grounds to let him answer?
I've given him 30 seconds extra, the gentlelady 30 seconds extra. If the gentleman can be concise and finish up here quickly, we will allow him to finish.
Yes, sir. And just conclude saying we felt that constituted powerful evidence of the knowing falsity of his statements in furtherance of the fraud.
Mr. Chairman, I would like to yield back, noting the presence of officers who were severely
Got
attacked,
nothing to yield back. You're a minute over. The gentleman from
protecting
Texas.
our lives on January 6th.
The gentleman from Texas, Mr. Gill, is recognized for 5 minutes.
Mr. Smith, in January of 2023, did you subpoena then Speaker of the House Kevin McCarthy's toll records?
Yes, sir, we did.
Yes, you did. And the subpoena covered the time period between November 2020 and January 2021. Is that right?
I'm sorry, sir, could you say that again?
We're not going to delay like this. The subpoena covered the time period between November of 2020 and January 2021. How many days after Kevin McCarthy was sworn in as Speaker did you subpoena his records?
I don't recall, but those two things had nothing to
It
do
was
with one.
16 days after becoming the highest-ranking Republican in the House of Representatives. You subpoenaed his toll records. Do you agree that that might reasonably be considered a violation of the speech or debate clause?
I do not, and I want to be clear that the toll
You were
records-
collecting months' worth of phone data on the Republican Speaker of the House, the leader of the opposition, right after he got sworn in as Speaker, all around the time of a major vote. That sounds like a flagrant violation of the speech or debate clause to me, and I think most people agree with me. And Speaker McCarthy had no recourse, did he? Because you issued a non-disclosure order ensuring that neither he nor any of the American people knew about these subpoenas. Is that right?
The toll record, the non-content toll record subpoenas, we did secure non-disclosure orders for those subpoenas.
You did, and let me ask you, Mr. Smith, at the time you secured those non-disclosure orders, was Speaker McCarthy a flight risk?
The non-disclosure order was based on concerns about
Was Speaker
obstruction.
McCarthy a flight risk?
He was not.
He was not. Then why did your non-disclosure order refer to him as a flight risk? It says right here, the court finds reasonable grounds to believe that such disclosure will result in flight from prosecution.
Sir, when securing a non-disclosure order, the risks don't have to be
You
associated.
think that the Speaker of the House
Can you
is a
finish
flight
answering
risk?
the question?
No, this is not your time. This is my time. You think the Speaker of the House is a flight risk? You think he's going to hop on a plane and leave the country?
No, what I was trying to explain is with respect to a non-disclosure order, the risks aren't necessarily associated with the subscriber to the phone. They're the risks to the
Okay.
investigation.
I think that you were using, this was clearly in reference to Speaker McCarthy, and you were using clearly false information to secure a non-disclosure order to hide from Speaker McCarthy and from the American people the fact that you were spying on his toll records. But I've got more, so let's move on. In May of 2023, you also issued subpoenas for toll records of 9 U.S. senators and an additional representative. Is that right?
In May of '23, we did issue.
You did, and there were non-disclosure orders in conjunction with those subpoenas as well, right?
That's correct, consistent with department policy and
Right.
the law.
So again, nobody would know what you were doing. The senators would, and the representatives would, and the American people wouldn't know what you were doing. Is that right?
The toll records that we secured and the non-disclosure orders were consistent with policy and consistent.
And you
with
knew
standards
whenever you were
that-
doing that there was a risk you were violating the speech or debate clause. Is that right?
The toll record subpoenas that we secured were with the concurrence of the public integrity.
Your own analysis says that you knew there was a risk you were violating the speech or debate clause. I have it right here. This is an email from John Keller at Public Integrity Section to your team. As you are aware, quote, as you are aware, there is some litigation risk regarding whether compelled disclosure of toll records of a member's legislative calls violates the speech or debate clause in the D.C. Circuit. That's from your own analysis right there. So you did know, didn't you?
Sir, with respect to the item you just put up on the screen, the last sentence states,
Oh, we're going to get to the last sentence.
okay,
We're going to get to the last sentence. And You cite case law in here, quote, "The bar on compelled disclosure is absolute." Is that right, or do you think that you didn't have to abide by that precedent?
To be clear, this statement is not from my office. This is the statement of the Public
This is
Integrity
your
Section.
justification for those subpoenas and NDOs that you ordered. This was part of your analysis. It's a cursory analysis. I think it's worth noting. But let's get to that last sentence then. Quote, "Given my understanding of the low likelihood that any of the members listed below would be charged, the litigation risk should be minimal here." In other words, you're using a novel legal theory, which you knew was novel, has never been tested by any court. You're not charging any of these members. Nobody's going to know about it because you issued NDOs. Nobody's going to sue this, so who cares? We're going to do it anyways. I mean, you walked all over the Constitution throughout this entire process.
Chairman, the gentleman's time's
spying
expired.
on members of Congress, and you know it. It's absolutely disgraceful. I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Not going to be charged. They're not going to see it. They're not going to know because we're not going to tell them. So let's go ahead and do it. It's exactly what happened. The gentleman from Tennessee is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Smith, it's great that you've been allowed to come here and testify to the American public. Is there anything you'd like briefly to discuss that Mr. Gill brought up on the reasons why you needed those phone records and the limitations that you thought might have been on you and the prosecution because of to risk the investigation?
Sure, and I would begin by pointing out that the email that was referenced wasn't a justification from my office. It was an email from the Public Integrity Section to my office approving the subpoenas. The subpoenas that we secured with non-disclosure orders from a judge because I had grave concerns about obstruction of justice in this investigation, specifically with regards to Donald Trump. Not only did we have the obstruction of justice that we were investigating in the classified documents case, but I was aware during the course of our investigation of targeting of witnesses during the course of the conspiracy itself. There were election workers who had their lives turned upside down and received vile death threats because they were targeted by Donald Trump and his co-conspirators. I had a duty to protect witnesses in this investigation. That risk, that threat to witnesses was only confirmed when we went forward in this case and Donald Trump suggested that one witness should be put to death and then also issued a statement to the effect of, if you come after me, I'm coming after you. In my mind, I can't think of a more direct threat to witnesses and individuals involved in that proceeding. Given that sort of threats, it was, in my view, completely appropriate to protect the integrity of the investigation, to protect against destruction of evidence, and to protect the witnesses in our case.
And just make clear, you did not see any of the discussion. There was not any, it was just the content that they made a call to the president and vice versa, but nothing about any content whatsoever.
That's correct. A toll record subpoena gives you who a call is from, who it is to, and the length of that call. It does not tell you the content of what people are speaking about.
You felt that you had a case that was one that you would win beyond a reasonable doubt and no moral certainty. Is there anything in your facts that you had that you would have used at trial that you believe has not been presented to the public in the past or have been misrepresented to the public?
Is there anything?
Essential facts that you had that you felt would have resulted in a conviction of the president on the charges that he was indicted upon?
I think my report, the report of our case, the final report, summarizes the evidence, I think, in a way that is gives a fair rating of the strength of the case.
And you have no question but have been successful before jury?
My review of the case, I came to the conclusion we had proof beyond a reasonable doubt. We were ready, willing, and able to go to trial in the case. Of course, as I said in my opening statement, prosecutors can't control outcomes, but I felt confident in pursuing the case to trial.
And you weren't pleased with that, but you had to follow the law, and that's what you did.
We followed policy throughout my investigation. My job was not to set policy, my job was to follow it, and that's what we did.
I want to thank you for your service. I think you're a great American, and you came out of this as being somebody who people can respect and look up to in a fashion that we should be instilling people's desire to go into justice, to go into law, and to go into government. And you're an example of the type of person they should follow. I yield back the balance of my time.
Gentleman yields it back. The gentleman from Wisconsin is recognized.
Mr. Smith, there's something that's really bothering me since your deposition. It's how and why you got the position of special counsel and your personal relationship with Marshall Miller. Let's go back to 1999 when you were working for the United States Attorney's Office for the Eastern District of New York. Is that when you first met Marshall Miller?
Yes.
So after ED New York, did the two of you ever work together again prior to becoming special counsel? According to the public bios for you and Mr. Miller, you overlapped at DOJ from 2014-15 when you were chief of DOJ's Public Integrity Section and Mr. Miller was chief of staff for DOJ's Criminal Division. Is that accurate?
I believe that is accurate, yes.
Okay, so were the two of you social outside of work?
I would say intermittently, yes.
Okay, but after 20 years of knowing each other, it's safe to say you were friends, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so let's fast forward to 2022. Mr. Miller is appointed Principal Associate Deputy Attorney General at DOJ, the number 3 at DOJ. You call your friend to congratulate him, and according to the deposition transcript, you say you'd be interested in a position at DOJ. Is that correct?
Yes. What I recall is that I expressed an interest if the right position came up, I would be interested in
But
considering.
at that point, there's no discussion about special counsel. Is that correct?
This is some time ago, and so I don't have a specific recollection of all these conversations.
So you were first approached about special counsel and that role before the 22 midterm elections. And according to the deposition transcript in October of 2022, you fly to DC, meet with the AG and the Deputy Attorney General. Is that correct?
Yes, I flew to DC, I believe it was in October, and I met the Deputy Attorney General, and also I met the Attorney General.
So in multiple conversations with your friend Marshall Miller, he never once tipped you off that the Attorney General or Deputy Attorney General have you on the short list for special counsel? That never came up?
Again, this was some time ago, but my recollection is I came to Washington and I met with those individuals as well as the Human Rights Section. Marshall Miller is the person who set that up.
So he was at the meetings. Was he at the meetings? So just to tie all this together, you've known Mr. Miller since you were both AUSA in New York. You stayed in touch over a 20-year career in federal government. He gets a job with the Biden administration, and just a few short months later, you're offered the role of special counsel. I'm having a hard time believing that this is some big coincidence and that there wasn't a back and forth on the special, that you would pursue, I mean, he had to have an idea that you would pursue exactly what the Biden administration wanted, which was criminal charges against President Trump.
I think that anybody who knows me well knows the idea that I would take direction from a political figure about how an investigation should come out. I don't think anybody who knows me thinks that's true.
Well, Chairman Jordan, I think the next deposition should be with Marshall Miller at this point. I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. The gentleman from Georgia is recognized.
And while we are deposing Marshall Miller, maybe we can depose Donald Trump about why he chose his personal lawyer to be the head of the DOJ. On January 6, 2026, the 5th anniversary of the insurrection, the White House launched a taxpayer-funded website that attempts to rewrite history about what happened on that day of infamy. On January 6, 2021, there was an insurrection at the United States Capitol that resulted in a police officer dying the next day, another 4 officers dying by suicide in the months thereafter, with at least 140 police officers being injured by the insurrectionists, with 15 of them requiring hospitalization. And I'm proud that we have 4 former officers as well as on-duty Capitol Hill police officers here today. Mr. Smith, I want to ask you about this website because the Trump administration is using taxpayer dollars to lie to the American people about the events leading up to and the events taking place on January 6, 2021. For example, this Trump propaganda site claims that the 2020 election was, quote, stolen. Mr. Smith, did your investigation uncover evidence sufficient to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that Donald Trump knew that his claim that the election was stolen was false?
Yes, it did.
And did your investigation uncover evidence sufficient to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that Donald Trump publicly claimed that the 2020 election was stolen from him while he privately acknowledged that he had lost the election?
Yes, we cited instances of that during in our case.
But yet here we see that on the 5th anniversary of the insurrection, the Trump White House propaganda machine is still promoting the stolen election theory on this government webpage with a text box titled, quote, fraudulent election, stolen election certified, end quote. The site also has a subsection reading in part, quote, FBI entrapment operation exposed. Mr. Smith, did your investigation develop any evidence to support the allegation that the FBI entrapped insurrectionists into committing crimes on January 6?
Our investigation revealed that Donald Trump is the person who caused January 6th, that it was foreseeable to him, and that he sought to exploit the violence.
This website also accuses you of being a, quote, Biden prosecutor who brought, quote, weaponized charges against Mr. Trump. Mr. Smith, were you a Biden prosecutor who weaponized the Department of Justice against Donald Trump?
Absolutely not.
Did Attorney General Merrick Garland direct you to prosecute Trump because Donald Trump was running against Joe Biden in the presidential election?
No.
There are also allegations that President Trump was the victim of, quote, lawfare, and accusations that the Department of Justice lawyers who prosecuted Donald Trump used, quote, fabricated indictments and rigged show trials. Did you, Mr. Smith, or the men and women working on your team work to fabricate indictments or put on rigged show trials?
No, we secured indictments from grand juries, and we were prepared to prove our case in court beyond a reasonable doubt.
Did you use your appointment as special counsel to conduct a politically motivated witch hunt, scam investigation, and prosecution of Donald Trump?
I did not. We followed the facts and we followed the law. Where that led us was to an indictment of an unprecedented criminal scheme to block the peaceful transfer of power.
And those indictments have been dismissed. Can they be re-brought or resurrected after Trump leaves office?
They were dismissed without prejudice.
So they can be refiled? And he can be prosecuted after he leaves office, is that correct?
I'm not going to speak to that. I can only speak to what we did, which was dismiss the case without prejudice.
All right. The website put out by the Trump White House on the anniversary of January 6th is nothing more than a pack of lies. It proves that Donald Trump is hell-bent on misusing taxpayer dollars in a feeble attempt to rewrite his criminal history and the history of what happened on January 6, 2021. And with that, I yield back, but I would like to, Mr. Chairman, offer for the record
Unanimous consent?
Unanimous consent. A statement from Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency released on November 12, 2020 that states the November 3rd election was the most secure in American history.
Objection.
And also testimony from, I would like to request unanimous consent to enter into the record the September 24th, 2020 testimony of Trump's former FBI Director, Chris Wray, who told the the Homeland Security Committee of the Senate that the FBI had, quote, not seen or historically had any kind of coordinated national voter
Without
fraud
objection.
effort in a major election.
Without objection.
And last but not least, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to ask unanimous consent to enter into the record this article titled "Disputing Trump, Barr Says No Widespread Election Fraud."
Without objection. The gentleman yields back. The gentleman from Texas is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Smith, on November 18th, 2022, A.G. Garland appointed you as special counsel. Can you tell me about your swearing in or the oath of office that you took after that?
I don't recall the specifics of it. I know I was sworn in. I don't recall the specifics of how that was done.
You don't remember who swore you in?
I don't.
Would you agree that taking the oath of office is a legal requirement for the job that you had?
I've taken oaths of office regularly. I haven't researched whether it's required or not, but I've done that, I think, in every government case.
It is required. Terms I heard earlier today were atypical, irregular, no proper procedure. Yet in your opening statement, you said that we followed Justice Department policies, and I would assume you meant the law as well. It strikes me as odd that you don't remember who swore you in, how you were sworn in. It's pretty significant. We all get sworn in here, and I remember every day. You don't remember who swore you in.
I don't remember the details of it as I sit here today.
But you did take the oath of office before you got rolling.
I think my recollection is it was when I was appointed.
It was when. It strikes me as odd that Attorney General Garland had you retake the oath of office on the 14th of September of the following year. Why did he make you do that?
As I sit here right now, I do not recall. I know that there is the oath of office that I signed. I believe it was on the 18th, the day that I was appointed. And I know the department had me do a second one. I don't know the particulars of why they asked me to do it again, but I know
you signed it on the 20th of November 2022, but there was no witness, which, I mean, you have to agree it's a little odd. If there's no witness saying that you took the oath of office, it would maybe make someone like me question whether or not you were legitimately doing the job until you finally took the oath of office. It sounds like the Attorney General had the same question and thought, oh shit, we got to have him sign this on the 14th day of September of the following year. So why did you take the oath of office again on the 14th of September of the following year when you say you took the office in November of 2022? Why'd you need to do it twice?
My recollection is that I took the oath of office, as you said, it was the 18th or the 20th, and felt I was under the oath of office. I believe, if you have it in front of you, I think I signed an oath.
You signed it, but there was no witness. There was supposed to be either notarized or a witness, and apparently Attorney General Garland thought it was significant enough to have you do another oath 11 months later. That's strange, right?
I don't know why they asked me to sign it again. I don't recall ever discussing this issue with Attorney General Garland.
Well, that is just wild to me. I'd like to yield the balance of my time to Mr. Jordan.
Well, which one was the official one? Which one counted? I think that's what the gentleman's asking.
I understood myself to have taken the oath of office when I assumed the job.
How much money did you? Okay. How much money did you spend in the investigating President Trump? How much money did your office spend?
I do not recall as I sit here now, but I know that pursuant to, I believe it's the special counsel regulations, reports were issued each 6 months detailing how much.
We gathered at $35 million. And what I want to know is how much of that $35 million of taxpayer money did you give to confidential human sources? We know you gave $20,000 to someone. It just got reported last week. How much more money did you pay confidential people we don't know about, with American tax money going after the guy we elected president?
My recollection regards the $20,000, which was not a payment from me. It was me approving a payment by the FBI to a confidential human source who was reviewing video and photographic.
Who's the source?
evidence. I do not know the identity of the source. What
How
I know-
many other payments went to this source or other sources?
As I sit here, I do not know the answer to that question. My role as special counsel, I was
$35 million, and you're giving money to people the country doesn't know who they are, and you're giving their hard-earned money to these folks? The main question I have, too, with this is, why'd you have to do it? You subpoenaed bank records from the RNC, phone records from members of Congress. You got subpoenas for bank records for people sitting right there on the front row. Why did you have to pay people for information when you
Time,
could
Mr.
subpoena them and get it?
Chairman. Time has expired.
Time has expired. You can answer the question, though. Country'd like to know why you had to do it.
My recollection and understanding is the payment, the $20,000 that I approved, was for a confidential human source to assist in the review of video and photographic evidence showing people who were attacking the Capitol, attacking police officers, obstructing the proceeding, and seeing if we could prove that some of those people had come directly.
That wasn't my question, but my time has expired.
Mr. Smith, after the mainstream media called the race for Biden about a week after the election, did Donald Trump concede the election?
He did not.
The next month, the Electoral College met in every state and voted Biden as the winner. Did Donald Trump concede then?
He did not.
Shortly after that, the last court case that Donald Trump brought was thrown out. Did he concede then?
No.
Is it your judgment then that only Donald Trump could have convened the mob in the size that it was assembled on January 6th?
Our assessment of the evidence is that he is the person most responsible for what happened on January 6th. He caused what happened. It was foreseeable to him. And then when it happened, he tried to exploit it in furtherance of the conspiracy.
And you actually obtained indictments from a grand jury, right? You went to a grand jury and did something that the Trump administration has not been able to do as they go after their enemies. Their cases are being thrown out. You obtained criminal indictments against the president. Is that right?
That's correct.
Mr. Smith, do you know who Edward Loya is?
I'm sorry?
Edward Loya, L-O-Y-A?
I believe Mr. Loya worked at the Public Integrity Section when I was there.
Did you know that he said of you, when it comes to investigating allegations of sophisticated federal criminal matters, Jack Smith is the gold standard? Do you know who Mr. James McGovern is?
Yes, he was a prosecutor I worked with in New York.
Did you know that he said of you, I have no idea what Mr. Smith's political beliefs are because he's completely apolitical? So are you a registered independent?
I have no partisan loyalties. I don't know if I'm registered as independent or not registered at all.
Are you glad you accepted Attorney General Garland's request to be a special prosecutor, even though you've been dragged over political barbed wire and your family has been subjected to death threats?
I don't regret it.
Do you remember where you were on September 11th?
I do.
What did you think of that day?
I was in Brooklyn when that happened. I was at the command center that night. I worked on that investigation. I remember pretty clearly.
Do you remember where you were on January 6th?
On January 6th, I was living in Europe working for the State Department seconded to a war crimes tribunal.
What did you think as you watched on television what happened at the Capitol that day?
To be honest with you, I don't recall if I saw it that day or a later day because of the time period.
What did you think when you saw it?
I was shocked. I was shocked by it. I obviously, being in Europe and not following things as closely, I was not, frankly, up to speed on the events leading up to it.
What shocked you about it?
I just never seen anything like that.
Gentleman yields back. The gentleman from Alabama is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Smith, you appear before this committee today not as a neutral observer of the law, but But at one point, you were one of the most powerful prosecutors in the federal system, armed with enormous discretion, minimal oversight, and a mandate that goes to the very heart of our constitutional order. You brought charges during an active election cycle. You relied on legal theories that had never before been tested in context. And you did so while disregarding long-standing Department of Justice policies designed to prevent prosecutors from influencing elections. Mr. Smith, you claimed in your investigation you developed proof beyond a reasonable doubt that President Trump engaged in criminal scheme to overturn the results in the 2020 election and to prevent lawful transfer of power. However, a few weeks ago in Georgia, Fulton County election board officials stated that 315,000 ballots were certified without required signatures on the tabulator tapes for poll workers. These signatures were required by the Georgia statute. If not counted, this could have turned the state of Georgia red, and I won't doubt there were similar schemes in many other states. You were illegally appointed to serve as special counsel since you were not confirmed by advance and consent Senate and stated in the Appointments Clause. You also issued an indictment against then President Biden's most formidable political opponent. The candidate was President Trump, and you issued a gag order for President Trump during a 2024 election cycle. This was a major violation of President Trump's First Amendment rights and a poor attempt to outright censor the leading political candidate. These actions were nothing short of election interference. 9 senators, including Senator Tuberville from my state of Alabama, and multiple Republican members of the House of Representatives had their phones subpoenaed, or their records subpoenaed. Some you seized their phones. Even then, Speaker of the House Kevin McCarthy, one of the highest-ranking Republicans in the country, had his phone records subpoenaed, all for political gain. These subpoenas clearly violated the speech and debate clause. As John Keller of the DOJ's Public Integrity section addressed this issue in an email dated May 17th of 2023, D.C. Circuit President stated that the speech and debate clause, and the bar is this, bar on compelled disclosure is absolute. These instances are not only the tip of the iceberg about you and your team's flagrant disregard of the Constitution. Mr. Smith, your actions have changed and damaged confidence in our justice system. Today, this committee will determine whether that damage was a result of reckless judgment, political bias, or deliberate misuse of authority. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I'll yield you the balance of my time for questions.
I thank the gentleman for yielding. I want to go back to that email, if we could put that up, this email that Mr. Gill highlighted a few minutes ago. This is the justification from the Public Integrity section. If you look at the bottom, John Keller, Public Integrity section, for going and getting the phone records, toll records of members of Congress. And there's a couple things I want to highlight. That first highlighted area, there is some litigation risk. So they admit there's some concern here. And they send this to the copy to Jack Smith's team. And then you go down later, as Mr. Gill pointed out, the case law is clear. A legislator may intervene and oppose such use. So the risk is real. But here's the deal. There was really no risk because we weren't going to know. They weren't going to tell us. They made sure they didn't tell us because they went to the judge and got a gag order. And look at the last sentence. The last sentence. Low likelihood that any of the members listed below would be charged. So they're not going to know because we're not going to charge any of these guys. They didn't do anything wrong. And so therefore, the litigation risk should be minimal. They're not going to be charged. We're not going to go after them. The litigation risk is minimal. And it's minimal because, frankly, it's non-existent because they're not going to know. And we're going to make sure they don't know because we're not even going to tell the judge who we're getting the gag orders on. And yet, Mr. Smith thought that was A-okay. That was just fine. That was in the letter and the spirit of the Constitution. I find that hard to believe. And you know why? You know why everyone knows it's wrong? Because the Public Integrity section at the Justice Department has now changed its policy. You can't do this anymore. They've changed their policy. But it was okay for Jack Smith to do it because we got to get Trump. We got to get the president. That's what this was all about. Yield back to the gentleman from Alabama.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield back.
Mr. Chairman, I have a unanimous consent request.
Gentleman from New York is recognized.
Mr. Chairman, I ask unanimous consent to enter into the record a transcript of the voicemail that President Trump's lawyer, Rudy Giuliani, left Senator Tuberville on January 6th, in which he states, "I'm calling you because I want to discuss with you how they're trying to rush this hearing and how we need you, our Republican friends, to try to just slow it down so we can get these legislatures to get more information."
Without objection. Gentleman yields back
Thank
the
you.
chair, now recognizes the gentleman from California.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The House Judiciary Committee is responsible for helping to ensure the rule of law. Unfortunately, the chairman of this committee ignored a bipartisan congressional subpoena directed at him. His actions have made it harder for this committee and other congressional committees to get witnesses and testimony and damage the rule of law. Now, before I ask questions of Mr. Smith, I just want to make a simple observation. How scared are Republicans of talking about the Epstein files? They're so scared that they literally are calling Jack Smith the distinguished federal prosecutor who secured multiple indictments against Donald Trump with multiple felony counts. Republicans would rather talk about the criminality of Donald Trump in trying to steal an election and trying to stop the peaceful transfer of power, and the criminality of Donald Trump in stealing classified documents, obstructing justice, than about Donald Trump's associations with Jeffrey Epstein and his pedophilia ring. I demand this committee, this chairman, and Republicans to call an immediate hearing asking why the Department of Justice is refusing to release 99% of the Epstein files and why the DOJ is violating the law right now. I have questions, Mr. Smith, for you, and thank you for being here today. My questions center on interactions or lack of interactions between the Biden administration and yourself. Did President Biden or anyone in the Biden White House ever direct you to seek retribution against anyone perceived to be Biden's political opponent?
No.
Did the Biden administration or President Biden or anyone in the White House ever write a social media post directing you to seek retribution against any particular individual?
No.
Did President Biden or anyone else in the Biden White House ever direct you to take any prosecutorial step whatsoever?
No.
Okay. Donald Trump made it clear he wanted to seek retribution against New York Attorney General Tish James. Trump relentlessly attacked her, saying, quote, she should be prosecuted and, quote, arrested and punished because she dared to hold Trump accountable for Trump's fraud in New York. Trump weaponized the Department of Justice, and the Trump DOJ opened a sham investigation into her alleged mortgage fraud. We know it's a sham investigation because they couldn't even get twice grand juries to secure indictments against her. When interim U.S. Attorney Eric Siebert, who Donald Trump himself appointed, spent 5 months investigating Tish James, he concluded there was not enough evidence to go forward. And what did Trump do? He fired his own U.S. attorney. Mr. Smith, did President Biden or anyone else in the Biden White House ever tell you that Donald Trump should be, quote, arrested and punished?
No.
Did President Biden or anyone else in the Biden White House ever threaten to fire you based on any action you took or did not take?
No.
Donald Trump also directed the Trump DOJ to open investigations into his own appointees who refused to do his bidding. His DOJ recently investigated Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell because Powell won't cede to Trump's bullying on interest rates. Did President Biden or anyone else in the Biden White House ever direct you to go after any Biden appointee?
No.
Okay. I just want to say a little bit about what the Republicans have brought up about these phone toll records. Do you believe the Speaker of the House is above the law?
No, I don't believe anybody should be above the law.
Right. And U.S. senators are not above the law, correct?
No.
Yeah. And members of Congress are not above the law, right?
No.
Yeah, that's right, because we're not. And what Republicans are trying to argue is somehow, if you're doing an investigation, you can't do stuff to senators or members of Congress. Get out of here. We're just under a law like everybody else. And by the way, the speech and debate clause only applies to legislative acts, communications with legislative acts. Stealing a frickin' election and trying to do so is not a legislative act. It is a crime. So I don't know what the heck they're talking about. And this is so stupid. I'm a former prosecutor. You'd never in an investigation go and try to get someone's tow records or phone records and then tell them, hey, dude, we're about to get your phone records. Of course you wouldn't tell them. What the Republicans are saying today is just idiotic. I am so pleased you're here on national TV telling the American people that Trump was indicted. He was indicted lawfully, and multiple grand juries secured those indictments. Thank you for your service, and history will look upon you well. I yield back.
Gentlelady from Florida is recognized for 5 minutes.
Mr. Smith, you have a long tenure at the Department of Justice. Would you agree with the statement that DOJ charging policies require prosecutors to bring charges only where the admissible evidence is expected to be sufficient to obtain and sustain a conviction? Is that right?
That is correct. That's from the federal principles of prosecution.
And in this case you brought against President Trump, one of the charges you pursued was under Title 18, Section 371, which requires an agreement to interfere with the lawful function of the United States through deceit or dishonesty that the defendant knowingly and intentionally joined, and an overt act. And what I'd like to ask you about is this. So you would agree that Section 371 requires dishonesty or deceit and also proof that a criminal defendant acted knowingly and intentionally. Is that right?
I believe that's correct. It requires knowing deceit targeted at a lawful government function.
So you would then also agree, would you not, that opinion, disagreement, or even mistake is insufficient to satisfy the burden of criminal intent set forth in that statute?
A mistake certainly would. We needed to prove and intended to prove at trial that the false statements that Donald Trump made were knowingly false.
That they were false and that it was done knowingly. So even under your theory of the case, even if we took your facts as true, you still would have been required to prove that the president said something false and that he or did it knowingly. So going on to your next charge, let's talk about obstruction. There too, that charge requires proof of wrongful intent, does it not?
That's correct.
So if a defendant there actually believes a factual claim is true, that would mean he could not be convicted of that charge. Isn't that right?
Well,
Not correctly convicted.
The defendant for that charge would have to behave corruptly, and corruptly could include seeking an unlawful benefit, seeking a benefit to benefit themselves, in this case, to stay in office when they had, in fact, not won the election.
But there, too, there's a requirement of intent, that this conduct must be knowing and intentional. Isn't that right?
There is an intent requirement, yes.
And
corrupt
didn't you
intent.
also acknowledge in your deposition that the president was receiving information from multiple advisors, Giuliani, Eastman, Clark, Powell, and in your deposition you said he was almost just regurgitating what they told him. Isn't that right?
I don't believe I said he was regurgitating what they told him. I think what I said is that he was making knowingly false claims, that he was believing anything that would keep him in office, and he was rejecting
But you
anything.
would agree that those people, or some people, were giving the president conflicting advice at that time. Would you not?
You're correct in that his original campaign staff told him he had lost. He fired them and brought in people who would...
But criminal liability, under the statutes you used in your indictment, requires proving intent, not simply the undermining of democratic norms or expressing an opinion with which you do not agree. So is it not correct, sir, that here you charged 2 intent-based crimes without any direct proof whatsoever that the conduct charged was knowing, intentional, or that you were going to have an adequate basis to sustain a conviction at trial?
I felt we had proof beyond a reasonable doubt. I felt that that proof included direct testimony from a number of witnesses to prove the knowing falsity of his claims.
Despite the fact that in your own deposition you acknowledge the existence of conflicting advice. If this defendant were anyone other than Donald J. Trump, Mr. Smith, I find it hard to believe that we would be sitting here today having a hearing about an indictment that was returned knowing that the elements of the offenses could not be demonstrated. Now, let's talk about this. I assume you're also familiar with the Department of Justice policy that prohibits prosecutors from selecting the timing of investigative or prosecutorial actions for the purpose of affecting any election.
Yes, I am. That's the election year sensitivities policy, and we followed it in all respects. The public integrity section who administers that policy concurred that we followed it in all respects.
Mr. Chairman, my time has expired.
The gentlelady yields back. The chair recognizes the ranking member for UC.
Thank you kindly, Mr. Chairman. This is from John Dowd. I was Donald Trump's lawyer. Jack Smith should be celebrated, not vilified. December 16th, 2025, last month.
Objection?
I ask unanimous consent to enter the record a criminal complaint filed by the Trump Department of Justice on December 13, 2025, detailing how Kash Patel and the FBI used a confidential human source and an undercover FBI agent to investigate a bomb threat in Los Angeles. And then finally, this is an article published by The Verge on October 19, 2023, titled Peter Thiel was reportedly an FBI informant, which reports that Peter Thiel served as a confidential human source for the FBI.
Without objection, the gentleman from Arizona is recognized for unanimous consent.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First one is from MSN.com. Biden's FBI paid anti-Trump sedition hunters as informants in J6 Arctic frost probes.
Without objection.
Jack Smith team approved $20,000 payment to informant to snitch on Trump during Arctic frost probe.
Without objection.
AT&T turned Kevin McCarthy's cell phone records over to Jack Smith.
Without objection.
Biden's legal team met with Jack Smith aide before Trump indictment.
Without objection.
Jack Smith deposition gives insight into failed effort to hold Trump accountable.
Without objection.
Trump special counsel Jack Smith was involved in Lois Lerner IRS scandal.
Without objection.
Special counsel Jack Smith's mixed history pursuing high-profile politicians.
Without objection.
And FBI resisted opening probe into Trump's role on January 6th.
Without objection, the gentleman from North Carolina is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Oh.
I think it's our turn. Do you yield your time?
Lost track after all those unanimous consent requests. Gentlelady from Washington is recognized, and then the gentleman from North Carolina.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Smith, thank you for coming here today. Your willingness to speak directly to us and to the American people about your investigation is professional, it's courageous, and it's patriotic. It's high time that the American people hear directly from you about the results of your investigation of President Donald Trump for his criminal actions leading up to and the day of January 6th, 2021. The facts, according to your report, are simple. Without a single piece of evidence, Trump sowed doubt about the 2020 election results and urged his followers to, quote, walk down to the Capitol and fight like hell on January 6th. And that's exactly what they did. Thousands of insurrectionists violently tried to stop Congress from certifying the 2020 election and doing our duty, and they assaulted law enforcement officers, some of whom are sitting right here in the chamber with us. I was trapped in the House gallery with a small number of members that day, and I will never forget the pounding on the doors and the insurrectionists threatening to kill us right outside. During your closed-door deposition last month, you and I had an exchange about the impact on our democracy, the toll on our democracy, for not holding a president accountable for trying to steal an election. Do you remember that exchange?
I do.
I want to return to it because I think what you said in the closed-door deposition is important for the American people to hear right here in your public testimony. How would you describe the toll on our democracy if we do not hold a president accountable for attempting to steal an election?
My belief is that if we do not hold the most powerful people in our society to the same standards of the rule of law, it can be catastrophic because if they don't have to follow the law, it's very easy to understand why people would think they don't have to follow the law as well. And so I think the law should be applied equally to everyone.
And what do you think the toll is for future elections and future presidents who try to steal an election?
I think if we don't hold people to account when they commit crimes, it sends a message that those crimes are okay, that our society accepts that. I believe that if we don't call people to account when they commit crimes in this context, it can endanger our election process, it can endanger election workers, and ultimately our democracy. The attack on this Capitol on January 6th was, and the Court of Appeals in Washington, D.C. said this, it was an attack on the structure of our democracy.
And we could experience much worse results down the road if this happens again. I thank you for your work, for your courage, and for your patriotism, and I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Gentleman from North Carolina is recognized.
Mr. Smith, just briefly, if there was no mob on January 6th that attacked the Capitol, we would not be here today, would we?
I can't speak to hypotheticals. The case I investigated involved a mob of supporters of Donald Trump supporters.
Sure, I understand that. I understand that. But had there not been a mob that rushed the Capitol, if they had just stayed in the original speech, if they had obeyed the instruction, go peacefully and patriotically and make your voices heard, we would not be here. Isn't that correct?
Well, in that case, Donald Trump wouldn't have done many of the things.
I'm just asking. If they had gone peacefully and patriotically, we would not have had a special prosecutor. President Trump would not have been indicted. There would not have been, quote, the attack on the foundations of our democracy, correct?
That's a hypothetical, and I think it's a counterfactual hypothetical.
Well, and second point, in regards to what we just heard from my colleague from Washington, I think it's noteworthy that the vice president, despite the enormous toll that he has taken in these events, was against charging the president criminally in this case. But in regards to my own experience, Mr. Smith, I've charged many conspiracies. There's obviously a lot of benefit to that charge. It's a useful tool for fact-finding, scrutinizing evidence, figuring out exactly what happened, trying to form charges, trying to prove charges, trying to solidify the evidence. And in your case, sir, you've detailed, number one, the unprecedented criminal scheme, your words, not mine. In the press conference, you said there was an unprecedented assault on the seat of American democracy. Do you remember saying that?
I believe so, yes.
And in regards to your investigative authority, it was quite broad. We've already established that you had millions of dollars at your disposal. You had teams of lawyers. You had total subpoena power. You used campaign officials as witnesses. You subpoenaed millions of documents. You had civilian witnesses. You had political leaders. You had campaign officials that worked with the president, folks who were in the room. And after all of this, sir, you charged a conspiracy, and notably absent, there was no insurrection charged. There was no seditious conspiracy charged. And there was only one defendant, correct? Donald Trump.
That is correct.
Despite 6 co-conspirators identified in the indictment, only one person was charged. Is that correct?
Yes.
Despite there being an unprecedented criminal scheme, you did not find it necessary to charge anybody else who was admittedly, by your own evidence, involved in a criminal conspiracy that amounted to an unprecedented assault on the seat of American democracy.
Yes. At the time of the conclusion of our work, my lawyers had determined, had believed that we did have proof to charge other people. I was in the process of making that determination when our work was concluded. But you are correct that the only person charged in this case was Donald Trump, who, in my estimation, was the person most culpable for the crimes charged.
Well, I understand your position, sir, but again, you started at the very top and only charged the top conspirator, in your opinion. You didn't charge anybody underneath him, correct?
Correct.
Despite that charge requirement, you would agree that a criminal conspiracy federally is a criminal agreement, correct?
Yes.
So by extension, people, under your theory, people besides the president were involved in the unprecedented assault on American democracy, but you didn't find it necessary to charge them criminally.
I had not yet charged anyone besides the president.
You didn't. You decided not to charge anybody but Donald Trump in that indictment.
Consistent with the federal principles of prosecution, which emphasize the degree of someone's culpability in making a charging decision, Donald Trump is the person that was charged.
I understand that. I understand your position, but you made the decision to charge one person and nobody else, correct?
I made the decision to make the charges in this case.
And in regards to the way that the case handled from there, sir, I just want to get this on the record. In regards to your press conference, politics played no role, correct?
That is correct.
The charges you brought, politics played no role, correct?
Correct.
The expedited trial date played no role, politics played no role, correct?
I followed the facts and the law, department policy.
The speedy trial request, there was no role in politics, correct?
That's correct. Supreme Court precedent emphasizes that.
And even your brief that the court found atypical, politics played no role.
Mr. Chairman, the time has expired.
The time of the gentleman has expired. The gentlelady from Pennsylvania is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Smith, for being here today. I believe it's important for the American people to finally hear from you directly about your investigations that you and your office conducted with integrity, following the facts and the law without fear or favor, as is department policy. And as people do hear from you, I think they're going to better understand why the White House and congressional Republicans are trying to rewrite history and seeking to discredit you and your investigation so that they can help the president avoid accountability for his crimes against the American people. So I'd like to move on from some of these baseless conspiracy theories we've been hearing and focus on your actual work as special counsel. In volume 1 of your report, you concluded that when it became clear that Mr. Trump had lost the election and that lawful means of challenging the election results had failed, he resorted to a series of criminal efforts to retain power. Chief among those criminal efforts was Mr. Trump's dissemination of demonstrably and often obviously false claims of election fraud in key states, claims that Donald Trump himself knew weren't true. In order to pressure officials to ignore vote tallies and submit fraudulent certificates of fake electors to Congress, he repeated these false claims and ultimately used them to direct an angry mob to attack the Capitol. So I represent southeastern Pennsylvania, which was one of the states targeted by Mr. Trump's criminal efforts. So being mindful of the clock, I wanted to try to explore 3 topics. First, the evidence that Trump made false claims of election fraud in Pennsylvania, knowing they were false. Second, the evidence concerning the submission of fake elector certificates from Pennsylvania to Congress. And third, why the evidence and witnesses concerning Trump's efforts in Pennsylvania were so compelling. So first up, in your report and deposition, you detailed the overwhelming evidence that Trump had lost Pennsylvania, and he knew it. Despite this, he and his co-conspirators continued to make false statements about that result to advance their criminal plan. Can you describe the evidence that these were false claims and they knew they were false, including statements by election officials, court cases, and conversations between Trump and his Republican allies in the state?
Sure. What springs to mind most immediately is I recall one particular claim that there were more votes than ballots than had been sent out. This was a claim that was obviously false because many even in the campaign knew that the reason for that discrepancy is we were talking about 2 different elections. One was the primary and one was the general election. My team interviewed Rudy Giuliani regarding that claim, and he admitted it was wrong. He admitted flat out that that was a mistake. And so that's one of several. With respect to witnesses in Pennsylvania, what springs to mind is the chair of the Republican Party, I believe, in Pennsylvania. This is relatively early, shortly after the election, had informed Donald Trump that the idea that fraud was the reason was not accurate. It was because of the counting of mail-in ballots, which was totally normal in this process. And again, this is someone who is a Republican who supported Donald Trump, wanted him to win. I submit he would have been a credible witness at trial.
And I mean, a second part of this, in addition to making false claims about election results that they knew were false, and your deposition and report go into this in some detail, there was also this fraudulent elector plan where Trump and his co-conspirators solicited folks who had been planning to be Trump electors if he won and asking them to submit fake certificates to Congress. And I think what you found was pretty remarkable, including a former congressman who told the co-conspirators that this was illegal and it was an attempt to overturn the government. Is that right?
That's correct. That particular elector, who was signed up to be a legitimate elector had Donald Trump in fact won the election, was a former U.S. attorney and former member of this Congress.
I mean, the bottom line is that despite the facts and over objections from his allies, Trump still went to the ellipse on January 6th and lied about Pennsylvania's votes to direct his angry mob to attack the Capitol. So I just want to thank you for your work and your years of service to the country, and I would invite everyone to read your deposition and to read the report, because it tells a very different story than what our colleagues do.
Mr. Chairman, I have a unanimous consent.
Gentlelady is recognized.
Mr. Chairman, I ask unanimous consent to enter into a record a speech by former Vice President Pence published on C-SPAN in June of 23, in which he calls the president's comments on January 6th reckless. Trump was wrong then, he's wrong now. Anyone who puts themselves over the Constitution should never be president, and anyone who asks someone else to put them over the Constitution should never be president.
Without objection.
And
the gentleman from Virginia is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Smith, you've said several times in your deposition that you believe that the facts and the law, your interpretation of the law, would lead to a conviction of President Trump. Is that correct?
Yes.
And did you believe that same thing, that your interpretation of the law, your reading of the law, would have resulted in the conviction when you went after Virginia Governor Bob McDonnell back in 2014? Did you believe it at the time?
I did believe, and
ultimately you got a conviction in lower court, but that was overturned by the Supreme Court, correct?
yes, the Supreme Court changed the law on what constituted an official act. And
Actually,
as a
that's
result,
incorrect.
that conviction was overturned.
That's incorrect. They applied the law, and they said in their ruling, our concern is not with tawdry tales of Ferraris, Rolexes, and ball gowns. It's instead with the broader legal implications of the government's boundless interpretation of the federal bribery statute. A more limited interpretation of the term official act leaves ample room for prosecuting corruption while comporting with the text of the statute and the precedent of this court. They accused you of using a boundless interpretation of the federal bribery statutes. Now, did you believe when you went after John Edwards that your interpretation of the facts and the law were correct and that you would convict John Edwards of corruption?
Yes.
But in fact, that case resulted in a jury deadlock on 5 charges and acquittal on another charge. Is that correct?
That is my recollection. That's correct.
Let's move on to the court's interpretation of your gag order requests. Mr. Smith, America was founded on the principle that the government doesn't silence political speech, in particular speech before it happens. You sought a prior restraint against President Trump without a single violation of pretrial release. In fact, there was no real-world harm that you could articulate justified giving the federal government the power to silence him as a presidential candidate, was there?
The court granted those motions and found that the prosecutor did not have to wait until someone was harmed to make such a motion.
Actually, the request was rejected when the case was actually, when you actually were not able to, it was restricted, correct? The gag order was restricted, correct?
Well, we filed for an order in the district court. The district court granted an order. President Trump appealed that order. The Court of Appeals absolutely agreed that there was a basis and that the threats to witnesses that came from the targeting by Donald Trump were real and that we had a duty to protect them. You are correct in that the Court of Appeals narrowed the order, so the order covered witnesses, court staff, the judge, and my staff. The difference was that it didn't cover me anymore, which I was fine with.
Did you have any evidence that President Trump's statements about the cases against him intimidated witnesses or prevented them from coming forward?
I had evidence that he said, if you come after me, I'm coming after you. He suggested a witness should be put to death. The courts found that those sort of statements not only deter witnesses who've come forward, they deter witnesses who've yet to come forward.
But you weren't able to identify a single witness who didn't come forward because they were intimidated by President Trump.
We had extremely thorough evidence that his statements were having an effect on the proceedings that is not permitted in any court of law in the United States.
Don't you think it's a pretty low bar to clear if you're trying to silence a candidate for president? I mean, if you can't identify a single witness who's intimidated, that maybe you should reconsider the gag order?
Both courts upheld the orders, and it is not incumbent on a prosecutor to wait until someone gets killed before they move for an order to protect the proceedings.
Did anyone on your team raise concerns that this expansive gag order you were seeking would infringe on President Trump's First Amendment rights?
My recollection is that we, of course, discussed First Amendment issues regarding this application because I and my staff respect the First Amendment, but the First Amendment does not allow one to make statements that interfere with the administration of justice in a judicial proceeding. My interpretation was supported and agreed upon by the district court and the Court of Appeals in terms of the phenomena of the statements being made, targeting individuals, causing threats to happen to them. I would also add, sir, that in the days after Donald Trump made some of these statements, the district court, in this case, received vile threats to the district court's life. In that environment, I felt a duty as a prosecutor to make that motion, and I make no apologies.
And the court stayed that motion on August 3rd, 2024. I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. I should have mentioned this a little bit earlier, Mr. Smith. If ever you need a break, if you need a restroom break, you or your counsel can just let us know. I think it's now the gentleman from Colorado gets 5 minutes.
Mr. Smith,
Can they? Yep. Can we take a short break?
5-10 minute recess, then we'll be right back at it.
on the floor.
Check, 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 check. 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2.
Good afternoon. I think it's important to recognize that in February of 2025, I and over 100 national sheriffs sat in a meeting with Tom Holman, the border czar, and listened to what the priorities were going to be of ICE, Customs Border Protection, and the administration. And we were told that number one was secure the borders, and number two was get the criminal element off the streets, the criminal aliens that we call them. A couple weeks ago, I heard a Customs Border Protection supervisor follow up with that and say that, you know, if we run into somebody on the sidewalk as we're going to a house, then we will probably scoop them up as well. And I call that collateral damage, being in the wrong place at the wrong time. I can confirm last night around 5 p.m., 6 p.m., that ICE arrested one of our corrections officer recruits. He was hired in February of last year and underwent a rigorous hiring process. In fact, the last 3 years we've had 1,800, almost 1,900 applications, and we've only hired 138. So our hiring process is pretty rigorous. Every hire is legally required to be verified through an I-9. That's everybody within 3 days of hire. This corrections officer had an I-9 done on him, and his responses and paperwork were pretty straightforward. His I-9 suggested that he was able to work in this country until April of 2029. Actually, the county has taken one step further and hired an immigration attorney to periodically check these I-9s and make sure that we're doing it correctly. However, because of this guy's pretty straightforward I-9, he was not one that was checked. We've also let 3 people go because of their I-9 not meshing, and we did not hire him as a result of that. This officer applied for a job in November of 2024. His background process started in December of 2024 and was completed in December 17th, so about 2 weeks. This background included reference checks, criminal history checks, fingerprints, computer-generated databases, and the results of this individual's background revealed no disqualifying conduct or no disqualifying convictions. The next stage of the process is to fill out a 40-plus page pre-employment polygraph statement that asks things like, are you part of a gang? Have you had anything, do you drink? Do you use drugs? Do you steal? Have you had any sexual activities with juveniles? It covers just about everything, including whether or not they have monetary problems making their payments. It was followed up by a polygraph by a very qualified polygraphist. And again, there were no statements of disqualifying conduct or disqualifying activities or crimes that hadn't been detected. The individual who was arrested last night was in the academy last fall. And in November, specifically November 11th through the 13th, this individual left the academy and went to Texas for a hearing on his immigration status. He didn't let us know until after the fact, and we had some issues with it because we should have known. But as my staff brought it to my attention, it's like, are we really worried about the fact that this individual is trying to get his immigration papers in line so he can become a legal citizen? The book and the movie do not line up. What I heard from Tom Homan almost a year ago, that we're going to remove the criminals off the street. And I've been pretty vocal about the fact that ICE does have a job to do, and that is to get the criminals off the street. The people that, much like the people that commit crimes that look like us, we don't want in our neighborhoods. I was all set with that. But in this particular case, this is an individual that had permission to be working in the state of Maine. We vetted him. He took the extra step of risking his job to fly to Texas to take care of hearings. And for some reason, he was picked up last night. We've all seen the 3-minute video. And I've heard some people say, oh, it's hard to watch. What was hard is that there were 5 to 7 ICE agents there. In my world, my colleagues, we've arrested some dangerous people on the back roads of Cumberland County with 3 or less deputies. Yet, this was a show of force, a show of whatever they were trying to do with 7 people. What's even more disturbing is the comment made by the witness that videotaped this encounter, who said that in the 3 minutes they got out, they pulled a guy from the car, handcuffed him, put him in the car, they all took off, leaving his car with the windows down, the lights on, unsecure, and unoccupied. They left it right on the side of the street. Folks, that's Bush League policing. Again, in my world, You wait for a wrecker. You wait for somebody to come pick it up that the individual wants. Or you get permission to drive the vehicle into a public parking spot, and you lock it up and you give the person their car keys. You don't leave their personal belongings unsecure along the streets of the city of Portland. It's not fair to the guy that owns the car. It's surely not fair to the Portland police. And it's what my understanding is going on. I'll end with this. We're being told one story, which is totally different than what's occurring or what occurred last night. I will take a few questions.
Can you confirm the name of the corrections officer?
No. It's going to be my internal affairs investigator is going to reach out for the, we're going to do an internal affairs investigation, so it's a personnel matter, and we don't release names.
And was it your understanding that he was seeking asylum, or what status was he in the process?
Not sure. Not sure. Yes.
You said that he had permission to be in the country until 2029, but there was a hearing in Texas, so was there any info to believe that may have changed?
The I-9 is work, it's a work privilege. So when he came in, he applied for an I-9, which gives him the ability to work in the United States until 2029. It has nothing to do with whether or not he can stay here or not.
And then just a general question, like, has anybody else through ICE been, like, booked through here?
Not that I'm aware of. Anybody have anything further on that?
Not from these arrests.
Yeah, okay.
So he was
Yes, sir.
arrested, any indication what he might be been charged with?
An ICE violation. You know, I did talk briefly with ICE. I called them today to find out if we could get a copy of the report and if I could get a copy or find out what he was charged with, you know. Again, we have to have probable cause, a reasonable suspicion to stop vehicles. I'm not sure what that was. So we'll hopefully get that in the report. I was told he's illegally in the United States, which is kind of troubling because here's a guy, again, trying to jump through the hoops. A guy that has been given the authority to work through 2029, yet he's illegally in the state of Maine or the United States.
You mentioned there was nothing disqualifying in the polygraph and all that. Did you find a criminal record at all?
No. In fact, he was squeaky clean. Squeaky clean.
And has the sheriff's office been in touch with this man's family?
No. I don't. I was told Boston. Yeah. Yes.
You seem pretty frustrated by how ICE is acting. Is your office doing anything in response to this or to try to protect the citizens of the Cumberland County?
I'll fall back on what I said last week. ICE is a legitimate law enforcement agency with a legitimate function. Based on the presentation by Mr. Holman a year ago, I came out of that with the idea that it was going to be something that everyone could get behind. This opened the door for me based on the fact, I mean, this is an individual that is trying to do all the right things. I've been getting emails about how do we going to protect people? You know, that's a hard one. There's 290,000 people and there's not enough cops, even if we brought in other law enforcement agencies. I just ask people to be vigilant. You know, clearly their motives are a little different than what we've been told, or at least in this case. And I heard today that I guess some judge has decided that, you know, ICE can just kick the door in and go in without any warrants and stuff. And I'd like to see that particular case because that's not how we operate as local police. And we dot every I, cross every T. And going back to the vehicle and leaving it unattended with lights on and stuff like that, if somebody didn't steal it, then Portland PD would have been chasing a stolen car. So when I say Bush League, I really mean Bush League. We don't do that as law enforcement officers.
Where did the arrest take place?
Portland. Bayside, that's all I know. So, anything else? Yes.
Any indication as to how he got on ICE's
They said he was illegal, which in my mind, when you look at what we tried to do, I come to a conclusion, I hope it's wrong, that if you're not a card-carrying U.S. citizen in this country, then everybody is illegal. But they didn't say more. I'm hoping to get the reports, because we will do an internal investigation. I'm leaving it open that after the polygraph, it's possible that this officer could have done something, but every indication we found is that this was a squeaky clean individual that really hadn't done anything at all. Yeah, since the polygraph was done in February, March. So.
And was doing a good job for you?
Yeah, no complaints whatsoever. No complaints. Like I said, I think the only thing we had was, he went to Texas to take care of his issue. Can't fault the guy for that, even though it was frustrating. And, he had a couple of tardy incidences where he was late getting there. But other than that, he was here all the time. And even when he took the time off, he knew enough to just not show up. He actually put in for sick leave or leave to do it. Yes.
You said that ICE has agreed to give you the reports?
No, I didn't say that. I've requested it.
You requested it?
Yep.
You don't know if they're going to give it to you?
Time will tell. I'm going to have the IA lieutenant reach out again, but, we'll see.
Yeah. And in terms of, I know this is the second time a corrections officer, similar situation, kind of seems like went through the same I-9 background check. I know at that time you said ICE wouldn't get on the phone with you to talk about this at all. What do you think is different about this situation in terms of that?
Well, I think at that particular time, I didn't get a courtesy call. And after that, I called and said, if, God forbid, I arrested one of their police officers, and it happens, I'm not sitting here saying that, like, if the officer had done something that, I'm not going to defend him, but to my knowledge, he hasn't done anything, right? But going back to that, I called the supervisor down in Boston and said, look, God forbid I arrest one of your agents, I am going to call you, and I expect the same courtesy back. And we did get that. In fact, he was seconds before the media started reaching out. But he made contact with me, just to let me know that one of our corrections officers had been arrested.
Yeah. Employee or supervisor from ICE made contact with you, you're saying?
Well, the supervisor made contact with one of my staff. So, but again, we learned something from the last time.
I talked to some residents who have said that they think local police being involved with ICE might help all these operations move smoother, but you've also just talked about how much police policing you've seen. Do you see any future in which things could work together for cleaner operations?
Most of the people that work in this area are from out of state. And when they leave the state and look in the rearview mirror, this place will be on fire, right? There's no buy-in. We also run the risk of police not trusting local law enforcement if they're involved with ICE. Yeah, I've tried to tell people, you know what, if there's a protest, we're there to protect them from counter-protesters or ICE. But local police is not going to always know. So that's a difficult question because most people don't want local law enforcement interacting with ICE. There could be a benefit there. We're used to de-escalating people. We're used to saying, whoa, 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 we're not leaving that car unattended with the keys in it. I mean, somebody apparently came and picked it up. I don't know if it's a stolen car that's running around the city of Portland now, but that creates problems for the city of Portland, who weren't there, but now they're taking a report of a stolen car and trying to find that. So that's why it's okay to get tough, but you also have to be empathetic and compassionate. And I didn't see any compassion last night. They were getting tough. But the compassionate thing would have been to make sure that this kid's property was taken care of one way or another. And I didn't see it.
Sheriff Joyce, the gentleman who went to Texas, wouldn't that have solidified his immigration status, and wouldn't ICE have known that then? If he went to Texas, went through this process, and solidified his immigration status, again, would ICE have known this? should they have known this?
I would think they would know it. I don't know what it would solidify. I mean, you know, in looking at his emails he sent to his supervisors, he went down for a court date on one day, and it got postponed another day. He had planned on taking 2 days, as I recall, and it ended up having to take 3 days to be heard, you know, and then took that day afterwards to drive home, so we could come back to work the next day. This is why I've also said that local law enforcement has no knowledge of ICE laws. I mean, they can tell me anything, and, you know, unless I have a law degree and specified in immigration law, I don't know if I can push back more, you know? I mean, like I said, I told you about the fact that he was illegal, but I told you what we did to make sure that we covered our bases before we hired him. And it's me going out there saying that, you know what, I guess if you're not the card-carrying, you know, U.S. citizen, then you must be illegal, because that's what they told me, is he's illegal. And he's definitely not a criminal. So what part of him is illegal? I don't know. So thank you very much. I appreciate you coming in. Thanks.
Cruz, those storming the Capitol need to stop right now. The Constitution protects but not violence. Chip Roy, today the People's House was attacked, which is an attack on the Republic itself. Steve Scalise, United States Capitol Police saved my life. Lindsey Graham, when it comes to accountability, the president needs to understand his actions were the problem. Troy Nels, oh my God, him again. I'm happy to stand shoulder to shoulder with Capitol Police. Darrell Issa, the violence and turmoil we witnessed in Washington, D.C. was completely unacceptable. Rep. McClintock, the attack on Capitol strikes the most sacred act of our democracy. And former Speaker of the House, Kevin McCarthy, whose name we heard a lot today, what did he have to say about it? Let me be clear, last week's violence attack on the Capitol was undemocratic, un-American, and criminal. And make no mistake, those who were responsible should be brought to justice. The president bears responsibility. Period. Or exclamation point. But let's talk also about, the present. That's the past. Let's talk about the present. These are the guys who created the weaponization committee for the DOJ. So let's talk about the present. Jerome Powell facing investigation, okay? In fact, we heard about Jonathan Turley, that he's some legal messiah. Jonathan Turley calls the Jerome Powell thing legitimate concerns of retaliation. Lisa Cook, under investigation. Mark Kelly, United States Senator, under investigation. Adam Schiff, United States Senator, under investigation. Eric Swalwell, United States Representative, under investigation. Chris Christie, potentially under investigation. Jack Smith, oh, that's you, under investigation. Okay, Miles Taylor, former Chief of Staff to United States Department of Homeland Security, under investigation. Christopher Krebs, former Director of Cybersecurity, under investigation. Indicted. James Comey, Letitia James. John Bolton. It's weird that they indicted John Bolton but stole his foreign policy. Accused of crimes. Former President Joe Biden. Former President Barack Obama. Revoked or threatened with revocation of Secret Service protection. Kamala Harris. Hunter Biden. Ashley Biden, the daughter of President Joe Biden. Mayorkas. Mike Pompeo. Brian Hook. General Mark Milley. John Bolton. Dr. Anthony Fauci, the guy Trump gave a medal to. Security clearance revoked. Joe Biden, Anthony Blinken, Jacob Sullivan, Lisa Monaco, Mark Zaid, Norman Eisen, Letitia James, Alvin Bragg, Andrew Weissman, Hillary Clinton, Liz Cheney, Kamala Harris, Adam Kinzinger, Fiona Hill, Alexander Vindman. Miles Taylor, I could keep going. Any questions about any of that? We know you don't.
But will the gentleman yield for a question?
I will, please.
Because you have a way of synthesizing that nobody else does, Mr. Moskowitz. Listening to our colleagues today, I wonder if they actually believe any of this would have happened had Donald Trump simply accepted the results of the election.
You mean like Al Gore did when he lost 5-4 at the Supreme Court?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Would any of this, would the violence have happened? Would the fake counterfeit slates have happened? The threats against Vice President Pence?
No, none of it would have happened. And Leon Panetta would still have his security clearance, so would John Brennan, so would Michael Morrell, Michael Vickers. I can't get them all in, Mr. Chairman. I can't get them. I have like 4 more pages of the weaponization of the Department.
The time of the gentleman from Florida
Concern.
has expired. The gentleman from South Carolina is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Smith, when was the initial indictment issued on President Trump? August 1st, 2023, does that sound about right?
That's in the election case. That's correct.
Correct. And on that election case, after that, you asked for a trial date when?
I don't recall as I sit here right now.
January 2024, does that sound about right?
That sounds about right.
Okay, so after the indictment, you in August, you asked for a January trial date. That's like 5 months? 5 months? How much evidence did you have? Millions of pages?
As I sit here right now, I don't recall the exact.
I think in your testimony, they talked about a number, 13 million pages. Is that a ballpark accurate number?
I think that was the question asked of me, and as I sit here, I don't have an accurate number.
So let's just assume that that's true, right? Because you had a bunch of stuff. You had $50 million that you blew through the Treasury on a trial that went nowhere. How many pages per day is that? 100,000? That sound about right? What if we break that down per hour? It's 4,166. Per minute is 70 pages. You like to read, sir? You like to read?
I do.
Do you read 70 pages a minute?
I do not.
I mean, that would be remarkable. So how do you prepare for a trial in 5 months if you're asking the defense counsel to read 70 pages a minute? How do you do that? And prepare a defense, and look at all the witness testimony and video evidence that you supposedly had? How do you do that? You know what's shocking to me, and I think that one of the most egregious aspects of this case, Mr. Smith, is that if you get a traffic ticket in Washington, D.C., you're not going to trial in 5 months. But you want the president, the former president of the United States, to have a trial date with 13 million pages of documents within 5 months. I think that's ridiculous. And I think that speaks exactly to what we talk about when we examine not only your record, but the things in this case that are deeply troubling. That this was not the pursuit of facts and law and letting the judge and the jury decide. That this was an exercise in political, it was a political hit job, timed perfectly against the President of the United States. Sir, in the Florida case, in the records case, what happened ultimately in that case?
What happened ultimately in the case?
Yeah, the Mar-a-Lago records case.
I'm going to answer because I don't think this is covered by Judge Cannon's order of the, we moved to dismiss that case pursuant to Justice Department policy.
No, the records case in Florida.
Against Donald Trump.
The records case in Mar-a-Lago, were you
I'm
ruled to be, what was the ruling in that?
That was Judge Cannon's ruling, and she ruled my appointment unlawful, and we sought to appeal that, and that appeal was pending at the time that we dismissed the cases.
So from the very beginning, were you ever confirmed by the United States Senate?
I have never been confirmed by the United States Senate. I will say that the history supporting my appointment is over 100 years old. Other special counsels
But isn't there a
have been
statute on the
approved.
appointment? I mean, you have to be confirmed by the Senate. So I think that's kind of interesting. But I think the point is, from the very beginning, on the documents case and others, you weren't even lawfully appointed, and that's why Judge Cannon ruled the way that she did. And from the beginning, we talk about that you followed Department of Justice policy, you followed the facts, you followed the law, you followed the Constitution. That's what you have said all throughout this day, parroted by the Democrats, that you have done nothing wrong. But from the very beginning, you weren't even lawfully, and you can't even recall who swore you in. So as we sit here today, based on your testimony in the transcribed interview, can you tell us who swore you in as special prosecutor?
As I said, I know I took the oath of office. I don't recall who swore me in. What I can share with you.
I don't know, sir. Call me naive, but that's a milestone career move for you that you get to do this, and you don't remember the circumstances. I just find that a little bit odd. But here's the thing, and I'm going to wrap up quick. You're unconstitutionally appointed. You breached the 60-day rule, releasing this very partisan attack against the president right before the election. You tampered with evidence in the Mar-a-Lago case that you admitted to in court filings. You subpoenaed members of Congress and their phone records in violation of the Constitution, of current statutes. You didn't even let the court know that these were members of Congress. How are we to assume otherwise that this wasn't political? Because it absolutely was, sir. And I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. The gentleman from New York is recognized for 5 minutes.
I would caution my friend from South Carolina and others against jumping into bed with Judge Cannon, who's been rebuked repeatedly by the 11th Circuit because she is completely lawless. But let's go back to the actual evidence rather than all the procedural stuff about when you were sworn in or not. I don't blame you for not remembering that. You've been probably sworn in a dozen times. It doesn't jump out at you. I want to go back to the evidence, though, that Donald Trump knew that he was lying about the election. And I'd ask you to say, if you could, specifically, who gave evidence to you that supported your conclusion that he knew that he was lying?
That came from a number of sources. It came from staff in the White House who talked to him and told him that his fraud claims were not true. It came from staff on his campaign who told him that. It came from members of the Department of Justice. It came from state officials who, when he tried to press them to do things in contravention of their oath. They refused to. They asked him for evidence and his co-conspirators, and they never provided it. Over and over again, the people who had who were best situated to know how the elections were conducted in these states, he either avoided contacting them or disregarded the clear debunkings that were provided to him, such as by the Georgia Secretary of State.
Right, and I mean, that's a lot of evidence, but we know that his attorney general at the time also concluded, quote, he knew well that he lost the election, Bill Barr, and yet he incited a riot on January 6th, and 4 of the brave officers who defended the
I'm Corporal Justin.
Parking lot in case there's an emergency in the building. We'll go ahead and go up the hill, up High Street, and then we will congregate on the sidewalk up High Street and make sure everybody's accounted for. We do have very trained staff within the room that are certified in CPR operations, fire extinguisher, AED. So if there is a medical emergency in the room, I will take the lead as far as calling 911. We have others in the back that will either grab the AED or start and perform CPR. So if you have any questions safety related, I can answer those real quick. Otherwise, we'll give you about 1 more minute before we officially kick off the press conference. Absolutely. Appreciate everybody being here today. Give a little bit of a mic check. We have about 1 minute until we will officially start. There, great. Thank you, everyone.
So I'll have the speakers come on up and we'll get ready. Where do you want us? I think just either side. So good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for joining us here today in the room and those that are online. My name is Ed Hassinger. I'm the director of the Missouri Department of Transportation. And we wanted to really get everybody together to give you a briefing on this significant winter weather event that's going to arrive in Missouri over the weekend. So to kind of level set, to get everybody kind of the equal playing field, we are really honored here to have Melissa Delia with the National Weather Service. I'm going to ask her to come up and kind of give you where the forecast stands as of today. And then those of us on the operations side will tell you what we're going to be doing over the weekend. And then we'll take questions after that. So Melissa, if you could tell us where we're at.
Thank you. So we are expecting a major winter storm with significant snowfall and dangerous temperatures to impact the region starting late Friday and continuing on into Sunday. And we're expecting the heaviest snowfall and greatest impacts to occur in southern Missouri, south of I-70. This precipitation is going to fall in 2 rounds, with the first round starting late Friday night into early Saturday morning and continuing into Saturday evening. And this is when we are going to see sleet falling across far southern Missouri along the Arkansas border and into the Boot Heel. That sleet across that area will transition to all snow, and the remainder of the event will be snow across the entire state. The second round of precipitation of snowfall will occur early Sunday morning and continuing through Sunday evening. Now, we have high confidence that we are going to see significant impacts to life across southern Missouri, south of I-70, but our uncertainty lies in how far north those impacts are going to extend above the I-70 corridor. Despite this, dangerous cold is certain with this event before, during, and after snow occurs. And that will make folks who are outside unsafe if they are not properly sheltered. These cold temperatures are going to linger into next week as well. And I'll turn it back.
Thank you, Melissa. I think you can see from that forecast that it's pretty clear that we're going to have a significant event, heavy snow, extremely bitter cold temperatures. And so with that, yesterday, as we got that forecast, we started mobilizing our team, started the winter weather planning events on Wednesday, and we've continued that throughout the day today, and we'll be fine-tuning that over the next 24 hours. So as we think about this, it's going to impact a majority of the population of the state of Missouri, fairly significant impacts across the state. And I want you all to know that as the precipitation starts to fall, our team is going to be fully deployed across the state. 3,000 folks working 2 shifts a day until this is back to near normal conditions across the state. So kind of the message that we really want to send is you have some time, right? It doesn't start until sometime on Friday afternoon or into the evening. You have time to prepare. So we're asking the public to help us as we try to do our job to make sure you're prepared. Really get off the road if you can. If you don't have to travel, there's really no reason to do so. And then give our team the ability and the room to work so that we can get the roads clear. I also want to reiterate to everybody that how we approach a storm is we work on major roads first. So those big roads that carry the most traffic, we work on those until we get them to near normal conditions. And then we move to our secondary system and make sure that they're passable. And we keep on that until we accomplish the goal of free travel on our major roads and that all of our minor roads are passable. So with this storm event, with the amount of snow and the extremely cold temperatures, which remember most of our chemicals don't work once we get down below 10 degrees, it's going to take a while. It's going to take us a little longer to get those major roads open. And then certainly by the time we get to our secondary roads, we'll keep working on those. But we're going to need people to experience some patience here as we get through the storm. So really the message is if you don't have to travel, don't. And if you do travel, make sure you're prepared. Our teams will be fully deployed across the state until we get everything back to near normal and open to traffic. But that could be into next week because the temperatures are not going to get much above freezing and there isn't going to be any sunshine until middle of the week next week. So we're prepared and we're working with our team. Our rhythm is always to work with our partners at the Highway Patrol and at SEMA and with the rest of the folks that are involved in this. So I wanted to turn it over to our partners at the Highway Patrol to tell you a little bit about what they're going to be doing over the next coming days. So it's my pleasure to introduce Captain White to talk about what the Highway Patrol is going to be doing.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon. My name is Captain Scott White of the Missouri State Highway Patrol. Thank you very much for everybody being here and online. That shows that you are taking it serious as we are. But I do want to start out with something very important, and that is that we've seen this before. The people of Missouri, the Patrol, MoDOT, and all of our partners, we've dealt with these situations before, but this is a serious matter. We're here today with everybody because Missouri is facing this dangerous winter weather and bitter cold in the next coming days, and we want the public to hear one consistent message from all of us, and that is that this weather has the potential to be life-threatening if people are not prepared. From the patrol's perspective, from what we do and our mission, our primary and main concern is travel and public safety. Based on the current forecasts that we're seeing, we expect hazardous road conditions across much of the state, and that can quickly turn a minor issue into a life-threatening emergency. So here's what we want everybody to understand. First, if you do not need to travel, do not travel. The most dangerous crashes that we see during the winter months are from people who underestimate the conditions and overestimate their abilities or the capability of their vehicle. We will be out across Missouri responding to incidents and working closely with MoDOT and local agencies, but we cannot be everywhere at once. What might normally be just a minor incident may quickly become life-threatening, and that's why we're stressing avoid travel unless it's absolutely necessary in an emergency. And then secondly, I also want to address expectations. So as always, for the last 95 years, since 1931, we will be visible and proactive during this weather event. Our goal is to prevent crashes, it's to prevent injuries and loss of life. We've adjusted staffing all across the state, and this is based on the anticipated conditions, and we will be able to respond effectively. However, during winter storms, help can take longer to reach people. If you absolutely must travel, what people do beforehand is really going to matter. That means checking your tires, your fuel levels, make sure your car is good to go. Make sure that you keep a winter survival kit in the car with blankets, water, food, and a phone charger. That's very important. That's probably one of the best tools that people can have out there, because nobody believes that they're going to be the one that will end up in a ditch or be the driver that ends up in a crash. But what they forget about is being stuck in a traffic backup for 6 hours or dealing with a road closure that doesn't have any good detours. And they're low on gas, they have no water, and a dead cell phone. So in bitter cold and these winter conditions, preparation definitely matters. And then let me leave you with this final message from the patrol. No appointment, no errand, and no activity is worth risking your life or risking the lives of others or any of us. The safest decision for everybody right now is to prepare, and if you don't need to be on the road, stay put until this event is over. I think I speak for everybody up here and the MoDOT crews and emergency services, everybody out there, that we'll be out there working long hours and in difficult conditions. And we ask the public that they do their part by making smart decisions and exercising patience until this event is over. Thank you.
Thank you, Captain. And then the last person in our group here that works together on this year in and year out is our friends over at the State Emergency Management Agency. So their director, Jim Remillard, is here and would like to share something with you. Jim, thanks.
Thank you. I'm Jim Remillard. I'm the director for State Emergency Management. Our State Emergency Operations Center will be operational Friday evening through the end of the threat to Missourians. We will staff our SEOC with emergency support function personnel from various agencies in state government so that we can assist local communities should they need assistance from the state of Missouri. And as everyone up here has asked, please stay home. If you don't have to travel, don't travel. The time to prepare is now, today, and tomorrow. And please be home or try to be home by tomorrow evening. Don't forget your pets and your neighbors. Check on them, check on the elderly. This bitter cold is going to be extremely dangerous. And as Melissa mentioned, please remember the snow is going to stop and start several times. So don't think just because it stops snowing on Saturday that it's not going to snow again while you're out. So with that, everyone be safe, and we appreciate the support of Missourians.
Thank you, Jim. I think as you can see, we've got a statewide mobilized team of folks that are going to be working on this until we're out on the other end. One of the things that I just want to reiterate is this is a partnership not amongst only us, but a partnership with the public. If the public will do those things that we're asking, we'll get through this with the least inconvenience possible and have everybody safe. The other thing that I think is important is the partnership with you, the media. I want to thank the media for attending today, because your part in this is getting the information to people about what's going on and when they can travel. So one of the things that is most important for you to be able to see is what are the road conditions, and MoDOT's traveler map is the best information on up-to-date information on road conditions across the state. Our team keeps that up to date hour by hour, and as conditions change, that gets updated. So as we get into that part where Jim talked about that it's going to stop snowing and then start again, watch that map before you make that decision to travel, and that'll give you a great idea about what conditions are statewide. Because you may be in some place in North Missouri that's completely clear and you're headed south, you're really going to want to know what that looks like before you get there. So I would urge you to take advantage of that. Our team will be updating social media feeds and information as conditions change, so stay tuned to that. And just wanted to thank all the partnership here with the state team and with our team and with you all for attending. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.